All right, so this next topic that we're going to talk about is all about sampling. Now, I recently did the Sound Design 101 series, which you should be able to find all the episodes now up on YouTube. And the very last one that I did was based on sample-based sound design, coming up with your own sounds by using samples. But I think that is a bit limited in its applications. Not in the sense that it's not a treasure trove of ideas, but I feel like it sells samples a bit short. I personally classify samples into two categories. I think there are sample packs, and then there's, if I want to be diplomatic, I'll say creative sampling. Or if I want to be a bit more spicy, I'll say sample theft. Because that's technically what's going on, but I also don't think there's anything wrong with it. So, starting off, let's just talk about sample pack usage. I have a bunch of sample packs here that we can look through. Some that I bought, some that I've been given by friends, some that I've even made myself. For now, we're just going to go through like some of these different sample pack companies and see what's going on. I have some from Echo Soundworks, ADSR, some from other producers. And the first consideration you should have when looking at sample packs is not what genre they're supposed to be for. The genre of a sample does not matter. The mood of the sample is king, in my opinion. When I'm going with samples for my production, I avoid looking for things like dubstep or rhythm or deep house or drum and bass. Instead, I'm looking for things that are dark, that are moody, that are uplifting, that are emotional, that are deep, that are warm. I'm looking for these tangential adjectives, things that put me in a space. I encourage you, while you're writing, to think about the world your song lives in. What kind of space do you envision your song being in when you're closing your eyes and just looking around? In your mind's eye, where are you? Is there a stage? Is there an auditorium? Are you in the forest? Are you in outer space? Are you in a room? Are you in a bed? There are lots of different ways you can envision this space, but that's really going to be where the good versus bad distinction comes in. Like, let's just look at some of these loops. So all of these basses sound rather aggressive. The name kind of implies that. They're very dark. They're very angry. If I was making a song that was about how much I loved you and how much I want you to be happy and how beautiful you are and how smart you are and how intelligent you are, that would be kind of a weird thing, right? That would be kind of a really, really weird relationship, pun not intended, to have with your music. So let's see if there's something maybe a little bit less aggro. Alright, so clearly those are all going to be not what we want for things to sound nice and approachable and pleasant. This, on the other hand, this could work. This could also work. But this one, a bit more spooky, right? Let's start with this, right? So now, we have some sort of mood here. I'm going to set this to 142 just so that we're at the same tempo as the sample. Now, what can we do to make this a little bit more of our own? Well, my first instinct when grabbing a sample pack loop is actually to rewrite the sample in a sense. And there's a few different ways to do that. If you're in Ableton, my favorite way is to slice the loop to a new MIDI clip. And this will just chop it up, usually based on the transients, but you can also do like some sort of beat grid division of it. So I'm just gonna click that. And now, what we could do is I'm gonna just delete all of these. And I'm gonna come up with my own rhythm. This. It's kind of nice. I'll change this one. Just transposing about octaves here. Just trying to find something that works here. Yeah, that's a nice little loop. So now let's try and build some idea around this. I would say this feels kind of inviting. I wouldn't say this sounds happy, but it doesn't sound aggressive. It doesn't sound scary. It sounds maybe a little bit melancholy. So let's think about what other sounds give us the impression of melancholy. I could see bells. I could see a Reese bass. I could see big, impactful, reverbed out percussion hits. So let's start looking through our sample packs and trying to find something like that. I'm gonna look for a Reese bass to start. I want something that's a little bit darker. Something kind of like this. I actually think that one will work. So this is from a completely different kit. We need to tune it. Let's see. Dun, dun. That's the key we're in, so we're in the key of dun. All right. Because these loops aren't listed by key. This one is. So I'm just going to find the key real quick. And the key of... We're in the key of duh, whatever note that is. In the key of F sharp or G flat. So I'm gonna take this C minor and I'm gonna transpose this up 6 semitones. So this is already a mood, right? I want this to be a little bit cooler, so I'm gonna take this. I'm going to add a little bit of color with a distortion unit. Going to low pass it to, like we talked about in the previous topic, push it lower. And I want this to be a little bit more original. I'm going to show you another way of keeping this because I like this harmonic progression. I like this idea. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop it up into little 1-bar segments. And I'm going to use another little trick. I don't know if every DAW can do this, but there are plenty of ways to make this effect happen. I'm going to go in and I'm going to use the warping mode right here on beats mode to create little plucks. So this is going to be like... You hear that? One consistent note. Just like that. going to set this to a different rate. I'm going to do 1/4 note here. Set this to 8ths again. Set this one to 8ths. And then 1/4. 8ths one more time. And then set this one to 16ths for a bit of a faster outro. And I might actually edit this a little bit more by duplicating this and then make it an 8th note. So now, the whole thing this one needs to be more plucky. Make these more plucky. Maybe make this a bit more kind of decayed. Now everything's really starting to flow together, right? Now, I haven't done a huge change to this, but now we have a little bit of our own color, a little bit of our own flavor on it. And the point of this, for me, is to encourage you not to feel like you can't just use a sample as is. Obviously, you're going to create something that's a bit more unique to yourself if you are repurposing it, kind of like we did for this loop. But there is nothing wrong with taking something that works and just letting that exist on its own. A great example for that is what we're going to do next, which is come up with a little drum groove. I'm going to grab a drum rack, and I'm just going to go through and find a bunch of different drum samples that are in kind of the world that I want this song to be in. I'm expecting something a little bit more, we're definitely in kind of like that trap hip-hop realm. So I want stuff that's a little bit more dark, a little bit more moody. I'm going to grab a couple of different drum hits here. This one, I'm going to grab another snare. And then I'm going to go actually to my other packs, and I'm going to search for percussion samples. Because I think you can get a lot of really cool things just by looking for sounds that exist in a space. So I'm just going to grab things that sound like they exist in this dark, moody, but inviting world. I don't want things that sound aggressive. These sound kind of aggressive. But these, they sound kind of cool. So I'm just going to grab a couple of different hits here. Ooh, I like that shaker too. I like these two. And I'm just getting a good variation of sounds here. Looking for a couple of options here. Sometimes this stuff is good too. Oh, actually, this reminds me of the important next step. So we'll keep this up, and we'll use these samples to build our groove, right? And I'm not going to be redoing all of these. I'm not coming up with something crazy. I'm just building a very basic loop here. And now I want to accentuate some of these hits with a clap. Which is a bit quiet, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull this off the grid a little bit. I'm creating a flam effect there. And now, for a bit more variation, let's pick a couple of snare hits, moving to different snare. And the last thing we really need to do is just make a couple little hits here and move them onto some of these other hits. And then we could use this as kind of like a hi-hat rhythm. Basic loop. I need to definitely mix it for sure. A lot of this stuff is kind of all over the place, but now we have this nice groove going. I want to layer this up, so what I'm going to do actually is I'm just going to get a hi-hat loop and find something that fits in this groove and just layer it in. This one will work, actually. Let's just layer this in, pretty much just as is. Because, you know, you don't need to come up with every single sound yourself if you're coming up with a lot of the sounds yourself. You know what I mean? Now, going back to here, I want to point out one of my most beloved ways of using samples, which is creating atmosphere and creating texture. And find a good one for this. Let's use this one. Chorus with birds. Let's just turn this way quiet. That's pretty cool. So at this point, we've sort of built up some combination of samples that we have modified, some more than others, some less than others. We've started to layer these samples together, and we started to build up kind of this world for all of these elements to live in. You can also start combining these things with your own ideas. So, for example, I'm going to just grab a vocal sample from here. I'm just going to look for, what did we say, we're in F sharp? I'm just going to grab one of these F sharp or F vocals. I'm going to just find, I guess, phrases is what I want. Sure, why not? So what I want to do now is take this, use this as is, but modify it. What we're going to do is we're going to grab another vocal sample. This is probably the hardest part, finding samples that work together, right? That'll work, actually. There we go. So what I wanted to do was basically just accentuate the rhythm here. This is just kind of a... I'm actually going to move these both over by one. So now, just so that we can make this a bit more of our own, we're just kind of accentuating each one of these main hits. I'm going to use a delay to push this further back into the mix. And together, hear how it kind of lines up on some of these? I'm going to move this around a little bit so it feels a bit more linked up in a sense. And now, Flows are really nice. Now, if you're dealing with like clicks or stuff, this is gonna be the problem. Zooming in here, do you see how there's like this center line right here? What you're dealing with is a zero crossing issue. This is a amplitude of 0, and this right here is saying to your DAW, don't play anything, then speaker cone, immediately jump up. Immediately jump from nothing to there. So there will always be that momentary little snap. The best way to deal with that would be either to adjust the sample until you see that it's ending on one of these 0 crossings right here, or starting, I should say, or ending, but mostly it's with starting that you'll find it. Or you fade in like that a little bit so that it forces the sample to start at that 0 point. Now, no matter what, it's never going to click. And you can just go in and replace all those samples, and just like that, you are done. And I want to actually retune this a little bit. Alright, hold on, there we go. And let's go. Yeah. And then we'll just repeat that. So, just like that, using only samples, we've created a pretty interesting and original groove. We've got the start of a beat going. We got a couple of different ideas that we can work with for these samples. We could start layering in our own sounds. Like, we could take this thing right here. Doesn't really have much sub. I'm actually just gonna go ahead and cut everything under 100 Hertz. And I'm going to layer this with a sub bass that's made with a VST. So now we've accentuated this sample, and from there you're pretty much just developing this out. If you need to start making changes to the sound, that's where things get a little bit weirder. This is where you start having to add in your own additional processes to make things evolve. So like, if I wanted this to have some sort of different section, have some sort of evolution of the sound, what I'd probably do is like, take a phaser or a flanger and start applying like dry wet modulation to it to give it motion. Maybe going in and stuttering things more. So like take this and like make it faster. See how that flows. And little things like that can add interest and sparkle. All of this stuff was done with sample pack stuff. And as I mentioned at the start of this, we're dealing with 2 different types of sampling. The other important thing that I want to look at is how would you use a sample that someone else made that wasn't from a sample pack, that wasn't from one of these. Let's go look at my field recordings, go into Audio Hijack, and let's go listen to see what I have in here.
familiar.
This.
Okay, so that has some cool sounds in it. I really like that lead. I want to just start it right here. And we're just going to try and sample that lead, right? That's all I want. So now, let's do some careful EQing. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to isolate out where the sound mostly is. So I think we could actually make something out of this. Because that's really all I want. What I'm going to do to bring back the high end is apply a little bit of distortion to the end, and then bring it up with a high shelf filter. Actually, I'm going to use reverb before that. So now we have a nice little synth thing. I'm going to freeze this down just so I have the audio to work with. You can see that there's even moments where it really isolates out, like there. So you could go and just use that, but we should just tune this in and time it out. So, let's see if this is in key. Nowhere near. Bum, 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 bum. So the sample is in the key of bum. So it's in D minor, and we are in F sharp minor. So I need to tune this up 4 semitones. Ooh, that kind of sounds nice. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to try and time this out so that it flows. I like this. Ooh, that's kind of nice. So let's add this to this last little bar right here. Maybe put this onto Complex Pro so it's a bit clearer. I want this to be maybe a little bit more engaging, so I'm going to move this over by a bar. Like that. I think it'd be better at the end here. So now we can start going in and finding other little things. Let's say, for example, we don't like that. Or maybe we don't like the bass line. We could find something from another track. Like, let's get rid of these. And let's just see what kind of basses we can find. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do something different. We're going to open up Safari, and we're going to go on a Safari. What I want to do is I want to go to YouTube, and then I'm just going to look for bass cover. That's really all I want. Let's do, sure, this one. I like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab any program to capture source audio. I'm just going to set this to Safari. We're going to record. This is called Audio Hijack. And I don't really care about the upper tones. We're going to really filter this out. We're going to now go back to Ableton. And we're going to find that. Let's drag this down here. It's already way faster. Whoops. So let's go over here and listen to this. Oh. That's where I want to start it. So first we're going to cut out those bass moments, because that's really all we care about. Right there. That's all I really want. And I'm just going to low pass out everything but the bass. That's all I really want. I'm going to just freeze and flatten this because I don't really need anything else. And now we can start replacing the sub with our own little cool thingy. Let's tune this down. Well, first, let's figure out what key we're in. That'll make it a lot easier rather than guessing. Ooh, so this one is also in D minor. So what we can do, since I tuned this up 4, but I want to have this be lower in pitch, I'm going to set this up 4 semitones, and I'm going to press shift down to pull it down to -8 semitones, which is the same thing but lower. And this is going to go the same direction, -8, now that we know where we're at. Obviously the timing's off, but we're kind of there. I'm going to do this like that. Sounds a little bit weird, but we could do probably Complex Pro. A little bit weird, so throw it down an octave. Ooh, I kind of like that. And then take this one. Take a phrase like this one. Stretch this out. Yes. Complex Pro. And that's our main idea. Let's go ahead and consolidate that. And then pitch it down an octave to bring it down to the bass range. Ah, now all of a sudden, we have our brand new bass line that I think is pretty funky. And you can hear the clicks. This would be a definite case where I'd want to start adding fades on each thing, because that's going to distract from the mix, because this is such a primary element. I actually really like that. Pretty nice, right? So there's really no limit to how far you can go with this, especially if you take all the things we talked about here and add in everything we talked about in the the Sound Design 101 on sampling and sample-based sound design. Sometimes you can just use the sound as is. A lot of times it just works. Like if you take One More Time by Daft Punk, for example, that is basically just a single sample chopped up a bunch of different ways. I think most of the Daft Punk songs are actually that same exact way, where you just take some sort of sample, and if you use it appropriately, if you combine it with your own ideas well enough, it just sounds good. It just sounds appropriate. If you're watching this at home, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell, do all the YouTube stuff. Check me out on Patreon, patreon.com/musarmakes. Check me out on Twitter, twitter.com/musarmakes. Check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/musarmakes. That's where we do this stream every Thursday. I think that should be it. So thank you so much for watching. If you have your own ideas for sampling, please drop those in the comments. And this will be where we end the video.